Okay, this will be a quick demo for making a flower that grows that can be used as an AR or VR object. I'm going to go ahead and just um, start by deleting everything here. So just a few basic concepts before we get in. I've got a few little quick numbers saved here. These are all 360 divided by these numbers. So, 360 divided by 7, 11, 13, 17, just because those are irregular ones, unlike 360 divided by 6, which is 60, obviously, so that's easier, and you'll see why we need those. This is just kind of handy to have around. Then there's a few other key commands that you might be unfamiliar with, like select similar, quick menu, extrude special, which is like if you want to extrude faces and away from each other as opposed to all in one direction. You'll see a little menu comes up. Edge crease, which creates edges that essentially ignore the subsurface modifier. Maybe not the perfect way to put it, but we'll go with that for now. Making linked duplicates, which is Alt D or Option D instead of Shift D, and we'll see what that does too in a moment. And then proportional editing, which is O. So you should be familiar with a lot of these, but just in case, I put those here. So we're going to use among other things, we're going to use a curve modifier as part of our process here. So it's important when making meshes that follow modifiers to know that typically they go in the X direction. So we're going to start by actually making, we're going to make our flower model, but then we're going to turn it on the X axis and then turn it back up with a curve. But we'll see that soon. So the first thing we need for a flower is a petal. So we're going to just go really simple. We're going to create a plane right here in edit mode. I'm going to put one cut in the middle. Then scrolling up, I'm going to put a couple cuts this way. Looking good. Now, we're going to use edge select. And I'm just going to select these two edges going across. And then I'm going to press O to turn on proportional editing. And I press S for scale, and you'll see, and Y for Y-axis. You see we're just going to kind of scale that out a little bit. And then we'll do the same thing here. We'll grab the outer edges, press S for scale, and Y for Y-axis, and we'll bring those down a little. And this looks kind of weird, but now we'll just press A and S on the X-axis, and you can see it's starting to look a little bit more like a leaf. So we might want to tweak a few things here. I'm going to turn proportional editing off, or petal, sorry, leaf or petal. We're going to do both. SY, you can kind of even that out a little bit. And I actually think it works better for our purposes. Whoops, I got too much there. Not to actually turn that down to 1 point. Then I'll grab these two edges here, and we'll look straight on the Z axis, and we'll just extrude out on the X. And there we go. We've got, I said I was gonna make a petal. This is more like a leaf, but we need a leaf too. We'll stretch that out a little more even. And that's looking pretty good. The next thing we're doing, we can press Option Select to grab this whole thing. You're gonna press G for grab, Z for Z axis, just bring it down a little bit. You can see we get that nice little fold there, which is why I wanted to keep this with kind of 3 points across all the way and not have it go down to 1 point. We can fix that later if we want, but right now I think that that looks good. And then to make it kind of a spoon, we can grab these 2 points here, and we can choose proportional editing, press G to grab, Z to lift. We can move that up accordingly to kind of get more of a spoon shape to our leaf. And then, if we want our leaf to be curved more, we can grab that whole section, proportional editing still. Now we have like a little curve to the leaf. You can see we can kind of scroll up and down. And I think that that looks great. I think that that looks plenty. This looks good. Next thing I'm going to do is we're going to add some edge creases onto this leaf. So we'll just to see what we're doing, let's go into object mode for a second, and we will add a subdivider modifier. So you can see that this leaf has kind of a nice organic shape. We're actually gonna take this modifier off soon because we're gonna add this as a whole when we put the whole mesh together, but it kind of helps us now to see what this looks like. So now we can see that if we grab this bottom edge, you can see how that really kind of gives us some nice organic effects when we move that around. I want to be able to see this edge because the leaf kind of has a vein going down it. So for that, we're going to press Shift E right here, which is an edge crease. So Shift E, and then I'm going to press the number 1. And now you can see, if we go into object mode, that we have like a nice crease going down our leaf. The other thing I could do, I don't think we really need it, is we could add an edge crease on these two edges here. So the leaf comes to a more abrupt ending, but it doesn't, I don't think it's really necessary. So I'm gonna just leave it at that for now. If we want a leaf to have like a really sharp point, what we can do, and I will do it here, is we can go into point select. We can select these 3 points here. And I'll press M for merge and merge these at the center. That did not look good. I think I had something else. Click 1, 2, 3, then M for merge, and I'll merge at last. Now you can see our leaf has like a razor sharp point to it, which I think looks great. I think I said this was a petal, but it's a leaf. Let's keep going. So you can see, you know, this, if we shade it smooth, if we add a solidifier, that we can get this nice look. And it looks even better if we put the solidify before. Well, I guess it just kind of depends what you're going for. This kind of maybe makes it more like a spoony petal or something. I think that looks pretty good. All right, so for now, we're going to take those modifiers off. We'll just keep this simple. We'll call it a leaf so we don't forget what it is. And now we'll go back to object mode, and we'll go ahead and hide this with H, and we'll make a petal. So same game here. Edit. I'm going to make this one slightly differently. I'm going to expand this on the x-axis first, and then hit loop select, scroll up a little. I think that looks good. Right click to drop that in the middle. Then with proportional editing on, I'll shrink this side first. See, I can kind of go down and see how far that goes. That looks good. Then I'll shrink this one second. That looks good. Turning proportional editing off by pressing O again. I'll just shrink that a little more. Expand that area out a little bit. Make those points opened. And let's see, when we put subdivide on this, that looks pretty good, but it's a little stumpy at the front here. So we can abruptly put that down. And you can see I'm not even using proportional editing there. And maybe we can bring it out a little bit. I think that's a great petal. So now I do want this one to have kind of a spoon effect to it too. So I'll put a loop cut in the middle. I'll actually grab that right now, turn on proportional editing, and press G to grab, C for Z-axis, and bring that down a little bit. You can see that kind of gives our petal a nice spoon shape. I think I also want it to curl a little bit. So in face select, I'm going to grab the end of it. We'll look at it from the side here. Still proportional editing on. So G for grab, move it up there, maybe rotate it around a little bit, grab it up. So we got this simple mesh, but we've got a nice little petal. Next thing I want to do is I want the origin point to be at the base of the petal, not in the middle of it. So that's no problem. I'll turn proportional editing off, and I'll just press A for select all, G for grab, X for x-axis, to just move it right there. So it's got its origin point right at the base, which is going to be good for a number of things. In fact, I'm even going to put the origin point a little further. So I'm going to move it for the flower petal. We'll put the origin point out a little bit. So we've done that. Now let's look at our leaf. Isolate that / tab for edit mode, A for select all, G for grab, X for x-axis, and we'll move that too. So that point is there. Great. All right, so we got a leaf and we've got a petal. So I'm going to hide leaf again. I'm going to name this petal so I can keep track of what I'm doing. Now we're going to quickly turn this into a flower. There's a few different ways to do this. What I'm going to do, so, I could make a radial array. I could just duplicate and rotate and repeat. What I'm going to do is similar to that. I'm going to do option, duplicate, rotate, and repeat. So I've got these numbers handy right here. I think I want to do actually 360 divided by 9, which I believe is 40. That's an easy one. So I'm going to give this 9 petals to start. We'll see how that looks. So I'll press option D for duplicate and R for rotate, Z for Z-axis, and then press 40. And now we've rotated it 40. And it looks like I got lucky. That's just the right angle for these petals. So now I'll just press Shift R, Shift R, Shift R until we have a flower. So this is looking pretty good. Now, a nice thing about this flower is because these are done with option D, these are all linked meshes. So I can click on, all of these petals are really hard to easily manipulate because they're on different axes. This one is parallel to the x-axis, so really easy to manipulate. So watch, I can go into edit and I can, here we have our pivot point. I'm going to click on this and set it to 3D cursor. So we're just rotating from the middle. And now if I rotate this, you'll see they all rotate along. So I can just rotate this on the axis. And I can get this looking just how I want. And I think that looks beautiful. Something else that's really nice about this, if you want to have a complex shape key of a bud opening, you can actually put the shape key on just one of these and it will also sync. So here I can add a basic shape key, a new shape key, and then in edit mode, I'm going to scale this on the y-axis so it gets nice and skinny, and then rotate it on the y-axis so it closes into a bud. And the cool thing about this is even if, we're going to undo this in a second, but even if I join this object, so it's one mesh now, you'll see that the shape key still applies to all of them. So it'll still close like a bud, which is really handy. So we're going to backtrack a bit. Unlink these. We're going to go before the shape keys. Okay, because we're going to do this in a little bit more of a simple way for this one. We could do these specialized shape keys for all of these, but anyway, like I said, we're going to keep it simple. I will go into edit mode on this flower and maybe scale it just a little bit on the y-axis so we can keep it perfect, but have them not touching in the middle. I also might turn proportional editing back on. And, I'm actually going to rotate this at kind of an irregular axis just to make the flower look a little more organic. I think that's nice. I'm actually going to do the same thing here. I'm just going to rotate this a little bit at this kind of random axis here. Now it just kind of gives it a slightly more organic look to it, which I think that's good. We got plenty. We got to keep moving with this. So this looks good. We could repeat this to make a sequence with a different number of petals in the middle. In fact, let's do that. So I'm going to press Shift D this time and Z for Z axis, and then shrink this down. We'll do it in edit mode. We'll shrink this down. Whoops. Shrink this down, and you can see it's shrinking down towards the origin point, and it's not touching the other petals, which is nice. And now back in object mode, maybe we had 18 on the outside. Let's use one of these weird numbers. Or what do we have, 9 on the outside? Sorry. Let's use one of these weird numbers. Let's have 11 petals on the inside, just for fun. So we'll press Option D, R for rotate, Z for Z axis. And now we're going to press the 11 number, which is 32.7272, and press enter. And now I'll just press. So now we've got 11 petals on the inside. And this overlap I actually think looks quite beautiful and natural, but if I don't want that, I can go into edit mode, select the whole thing, scale this on the y-axis until they separate. Maybe I'll have them overlap just a little bit. I think that's really nice. And I also want these to maybe be a little less curled in the middle. So I'll press S for scale, Z for Z axis, and just kind of scale a little flatter. Now we've got the inside of our flower, and we're not gonna do any more there for the flower. So this looks good. So we're gonna try to keep things really simple here. So I'm actually just gonna select all this stuff here and press search, join, and now this whole flower here is just one mesh. And I'm also gonna go ahead and delete any shape keys on it this time around. And I'll also take off the modifier. So it's just, we just got a low poly flower here. Another thing that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna select all the points here and press Control G and assign it to a new group, and then call this group flower. So if I wanna just select these flower petals in the future, even when I combine this with other meshes, that information will come with it. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. So now switch this back to medium, which is the default here. I like to switch things back to the default when I'm finished using them. So now in object mode, we're just going to lift this flower, the z-axis, to get it to about the height we want it. And now we will add a cylinder to our scene. I want the point at the bottom, so I'll go into edit and press G for grab, Z for z-axis, and hold down Control, whoops, to just snap it to the base. And now back in these settings here, oh, you know what? I'm going to add this one more time. That cylinder has more geometry than we need. I'm just going to reduce it to 8 sides. And now we'll just do the same thing again, because we'll put a subsurface on it later. G for grab, Z for Z-axis, Control. And now here in object mode, we'll just quickly shrink it down a little bit and then scale it on the Z-axis until the stem comes up to the flower. I'll press Control A and apply all transformations, so the origin point. Well, just so the scale and everything fits with it. In edit mode, I'm going to select the top of this cylinder, and I'm going to press Q for my quick menu and choose this option cursor to selected to put this cursor up here. And now I'm going to add a UV sphere inside this mesh. I'll set that to 20 by 10, relatively low resolution. And now while I have that selected, I'm going to turn proportional editing off. I'm going to scale that down a little bit, flatten it out a little bit too. Here in the proportional editing, we can choose connected only, which means I can turn proportional editing on. I can grab the bottom, let's do straight on side. I can grab the bottom of this cylinder, and you can see that while it proportionally will affect the rest of the bottom of this sphere, you can see while it affects the rest of the sphere, it does not affect the stem. So here I will scale the bottom of it down a little bit, scale it up on the z-axis. Let's reduce the proportional editing some more, bring it down on the z-axis, just to kind of create more of a bud shape here. Turn X-ray mode off. Now remember also L will allow you to grab linked points. Turn proportional editing off here. G, put that up. Maybe expand that out a little bit. Flatten it a little bit. Stretch that down just to kind of fill it in a little bit. Now that's not perfect, but sometimes perfect is the enemy of getting it done. So let's just keep going. Going to face select, I'm going to use loop select and select in on these faces. And now I'm going to press Option E for special extrude and extrude individual faces. I'm going to kind of just go out a little bit, and that looks kind of weird and high tech, but you'll see when we add a subsurface, it's going to look great. We'll get this, we'll loop select down here, and we'll do the same thing. Extrude individual faces. So I'm going to extrude them once. I'll press Shift R to do it one more time, and then just scale that down so it kind of come up. So we kind of have like a little bit of a bumpy flower thing going on in the middle of our flower. That looks good. If we want like a little stamen or whatever you call it in the middle, you can also press Command Shift V to open up the middle here, and then select this little thing in the middle and have like a little thing sticking up out of the middle. We'll just leave it like that for now. So this is looking good. I see it's almost 20 minutes here. We're going to speed up a little. So now here we have our leaf, and this part would normally be done with a radial array, but I think that this is actually better done just with quick duplication. We're going to do more irregular rotations this time. So we're going to do a few things. First, in edit mode, I'm going to set this to individual origins, which I think will allow this to, no, we'll keep it on 3D cursor. We'll reset our cursor back to the bottom, and then, which is Shift C, and then in edit mode, we'll rotate this on the Y-axis so this leaf comes up a little bit. I think that looks good. Now I'm going to go into point select and X-ray view, and we're going to kind of tweak this leaf a little bit. So I'm going to grab it right here first. I'm going to grab all those points, proportional editing on, and we'll rotate. But we'll switch our rotate back to the medium point, and we'll rotate that around. It looks weird at first, but now we'll just kind of, let's try that again. We'll rotate that, but we'll turn the proportional editing up, scroll wheel, so it looks a little less weird. There we go, get a nice little curve there. Just rotate it a little bit, and then we'll grab significantly less and do the same thing again. Maybe take just the point of the leaf, rotate that, and you can see we've got like a nice curve on our leaf here. And I think that looks great. We're going to just keep going there. Now I'm going to do two things with this leaf. I'm going to duplicate this once, and I'm going to lift it on the z-axis. I'm going to scale it. Whoops. I'm going to scale way down. I'm going to keep lifting it till it gets to the flower here, and then I'm going to rotate it on Y, turn off X-ray so we can see what we're doing. And then in edit mode, I'm going to go ahead and rotate this part of the leaf back up. I'm switching between edit and object mode so I can take advantage of the origin point. Edit mode, I'll grab the bottom points of this leaf, just draw them down. Let's see, you can kind of mess with that circle of edit mode until that looks, it's a little janky, but that looks good. And now in edit, in object mode, I'm going to lift this up to about here. I can see I kind of messed this leaf up a little bit, but I don't care because it's actually going to look good for this part. So now let's have this one maybe go around 20 times. So 360 divided by, so half of 36 is 18. So there'll be 18 degrees. So here we'll press Shift D, R, Z, 18, and then we'll just press Shift R until we've made it all the way around. And now we've got like this cool little, whatever it is, like little leafy cool bit at the bottom of the flower. I'm not gonna worry about naming that. So that looks really nice. So I'm just gonna momentarily hide this stem so I can select all of that. Select all of that, select the flower last, and then we'll join those two. So that whole section is the flower, and we'll go ahead and make sure all those points are assigned to the flower group there in case we need it. Though I don't think we're even going to need it for this mode. Okay, so they seem a little tedious, but I promise we're getting really close. We'll maybe make this a little skinnier. Got this coming up. Scale this leaf down a little bit. And now we want more than one leaf growing out of our flower. So really simple here. We're just going to look at it straight on the side, and we'll press Shift D or Option D in case we want these to be synced. Z axis, and we'll lift this up a little bit. And then we'll press Shift R, Shift R, Shift R. And we actually could have used Shift D for this, but it doesn't matter. In object mode, they won't sync. So we'll shrink this one just a little bit smaller than the one below it. And then we'll press Shift R, Shift R, Shift R, Shift R, Shift R. I'm not saying it again. There we go. So now we've got like a sequence of leaves going down, and there's a few different ways to do this. I find just using this Shift R repeat command does the trick. So I'm gonna look here and I'm gonna rotate this on the Z axis just a little bit. And now on this one, we can do the same thing with Shift R. And I think that that looks fine as a distribution of petals. It's kind of spiraling up, which is nice. And we can do this with an array modifier to make it more precise, but actually, I think precision sometimes looks less organic. So now we'll just go ahead and select the leaves. I don't think we need to do any more tweaking to the meshes on them. I guess we could, if we want to be really meticulous, maybe bring that point in just a little bit, but it really doesn't matter. Just to show you why we did Option D is all. So now we'll just select these. I'll select the bottom one last. And we will turn these into one mesh too. So join, tab, select all these, Control G, assign to a new group. We'll call it leaf. We can just test that, select leaves. Okay, so now we're almost ready to put this all together, and we're going to kind of put it together and take it apart, which is weird, but you'll see why. So in edit mode, we're going to grab this, and we're going to assign this to a group, and we'll call the group stem, etc. And now you can see that when we put all of these together, and I'm just going to press Control J as a shortcut into one mesh, that now when we go into edit mode, we've got groups for all these things. So we can select just the flower, we can select just the leaves, we can select just the stem. It also means these are flat, so we want to put a solidify modifier on them. The stem and the stuff inside is whole, so we can actually target that solidify modifier to only affect, the petals and the leaves with groups. But we'll get there. All right, so this is looking pretty good. The next thing we're going to do is we are going to press Shift-C, make sure the cursor is reset, and then we'll set the origin to the 3D cursor. And now we'll rotate this on the y-axis 90 degrees, so our flower is on its side. Call it flower. All right. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to add a curve, and we will just add a path. And I will isolate it so I can see it and go to tab. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to press G for G-axis. X, interproportional editing off, sorry. G, X, hold down Control. And we're just going to move that curve so it starts in the X-axis. And it's kind of hard to see when it's not isolated, but it's there. So we'll just scale that curve up until it comes out of the flower. But actually, that's okay. It's a little longer than the flower. And now we're going to take the flower. And the first thing we're going to do is add the word flower there so we know what that's attached to. We'll take our flower mesh and we will press Control P and parent it to the curve. So now we can rotate this curve around and the flower goes with it. And then on this flower, we're going to actually set up our modifiers on it now. So we can add a subsurface modifier, smooth it out a little bit. We can also set this to shade smooth while we're at it. And you can see the stem did something really funky there, and we're going to address that in a moment. Then we can add a solidifier, but here we're going to have it solidify. We want it to solidify the flower and the leaves. So we're going to go back into edit mode. And first thing I do is I'm going to put a ton of loop cuts on this stem, which I forgot to do earlier, which will first cause it not to turn into that little spike, but more importantly, the stem can bend now because it has the geometry to do so. And then we will select our flower. We'll select our leaves, and then we'll press Control G again, make another group. We'll just call it solid for solidify because that's what we're using it for. So now we can go to the solidify modifier and only solidify the petals and leaves, which doesn't really look different. It's just that it's not adding geometry inside the stem anymore. And then the last modifier we're going to add will be a curve modifier. So we'll go to, on the flower itself, let's make sure we've applied all transformations. And then we will add a curve modifier. And if nothing happened, that means you're on the right track. So there's our curve modifier. We'll select our curve. Still nothing happened. That's great. That means everything's lined up nicely. But if we edit this curve, you can see it's going to bend the flower, which is going to look great. So the first thing we'll do is we'll take this curve and we will rotate it minus 90 on Y. And you can see that things are really starting to come together now. And we will add some actual curves to the curve modifier. So we can grab this one here, grab this one here. And I think that looks nice. If you don't want the flower to get distorted by the curve, um, sort of keep a few points straight around it. And then you can see we can select those 3 points. And when we rotate them, the flower won't distort as much. We can also kind of like move it around. So you sort of center that line through the flower and your flower is not going to move. I think that's fine for a bend right now. And the beautiful thing is we can put shape keys on this curve too. So we can actually modify it so the flower wiggles as it goes. So now that this is on a curve, we already have one really simple animation that's going to work, which is we can just in object mode scale this flower down and it's going to follow the curve as it grows, which already looks pretty good, but I want to add a little more to it. So the first thing I'm going to do is in flower mode, I'm going to go to my vertex groups again. You'll see why we grabbed these, and we'll select the leaves. And now I'm going to press P and separate selection. But you see that they're still on the curve, and their origin point is still at the bottom. So now in object mode, you can see that if I shrink these leaves, they're going to go down on their own too. And you'll see why we separated those in just a moment. So we've got those leaves separated, and we're going to click the leaves, we'll click the flower, and hit Command P, the parent object keep transform. And now when we shrink the flower, the leaves still go down with it, the same as they did before. The reason we did this was for shape keys. So we'll select the leaves, and now we'll add 2 shape keys to the leaves, and we'll go into edit mode. We can isolate, so we're / so we're just looking at the leaves. And now we're going to do this pretty quickly, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my transform pivot point to 3D cursor. And now I'm going to do these quick selections where I grab the bottom of the leaf, I hit my quick menu, cursor to selected. You can also just search cursor to selected, and that'll be the first thing that comes up. And now I'm going to press L to grab linked pixels, linked points, I mean. And I'm going to press S and Z to kind of flatten this leaf down towards that point, and then S again to just like scale it way down into like a little nub. And I'm just going to kind of keep doing that. So cursor to selected, L, flatten it down a little bit, pop it in there into a little bud. Cursor to selected, and we can even get kind of fancy and whoops, fortunately should be on. We can even get kind of fancy and like so we can switch this back to medium point. median point, we can try to like a leaf that kind of spirals as it grows. We got that one like kind of, oops, set this back to cursor. So that one's going to kind of unfurl as it comes out, but I'm not going to do that to the other ones because that takes a little more time. Just an idea there, cursor to selected. Whoops, turn proportional editing off. Or it doesn't matter. That one going too. And now you can see we've got this shape key, which we can also animate here, which will allow our leaves to be like little buds so they can come out when they're ready. And you could also like curl them up and have them uncurl. So we're also going to add one shape key to the flower here. And let's see if this works. I'd love to do this with one shape key. So let's see if this works. So we're going to look at the flower straight from the top. We don't have to worry about selecting the leaves because we separated them. And we'll keep X-ray mode off here. I'm just going to go around and kind of grab the tips of these petals. Now I'll hit cursor to selected, so the cursor's like right between those tips. Maybe actually that put the cursor off center, which I don't like. So I'm going to do this a little differently. I'm going to select these faces. I'll press Shift G and select perimeter. And then I'll hit cursor to selected. Now the cursor is centered. Let's see if we can do this with the faces selected. So now we have proportional editing on. We're going to scale these in, lift them up. And you can see it's not affecting the other stuff. So this is bad news. What we want to do is turn off connected only. So it just grabs all this stuff. We can just kind of close this up into a really simple bud this way. I think that that works. We could do more complicated, but I think that that looks pretty good. All selected there. And now let's select the whole flower ball here and we'll scale it down. A little bit. Maybe scale it down on everything but the z-axis. We'll scale it down a little bit, and you can see it's kind of pulling the stem, which I liked at first, but now I'm going to unselect proportional editing and scale this on the z-axis more. Maybe even scale the whole thing down even more. So now we have this really cool kind of bud structure here. And I foolishly did all that without setting a shape key. Oh my God. Okay. So let's quickly do that again. So add basic, add shape key 1. Now we'll do that same thing again. Select the perimeter. So we got all those points. Proportional editing on. Look at it straight from the side. We'll scale that in a little bit, move it up, scale it in. So scale this in a little bit. Move it up. Well, then you've got to really just mess with that proportional editing as you go. Press Shift Z, so it's just scaling it in. That looks good. Now select the whole flower. Scale it in a little more. Turn off proportional editing. Scale it in. We bring it down a little bit. And there we go. So now we have the value on this will close this bud. So now we have all these different parameters that we can animate, and we can also animate, so I'll turn this off for now. We can also animate one more shape key onto this curve itself. So here we can have that, and maybe we'll turn proportional editing on here, and have this maybe kind of sway over, sway a little bit, and rotate. That's going to be sway over that way a little bit. I don't know. So there we have that. Maybe we'll just move this one out a little bit too. Okay, so everything is set. So we can go ahead and save this. Super flower. Now we can set all these different timelines on this. So I'm just going to set this to 90 frames. Keep this animation short for now. And let's go. So we can click on the flower and we can set this keyframe all the way to 1 and press I to set a keyframe on that. And I don't want the bud to start even opening till it gets pretty close to the top. So I'm going to go ahead and just press Shift D and add that second keyframe all the way out to 50. So the bud's not even going to start opening until this thing is more than halfway grown. And then we'll kind of do the same thing, more or less, with this. So we'll set the keyframe on the leaves. So they're just like little bumpy buds on this thing. And we'll set the keyframe there on the shape key. And then I'll go ahead and duplicate. And we'll have this one, the leaves will actually start coming out at about 40 something. Then we'll go to the last frame, turn that to 0, hit I, and I should have done that on the flower too. So last frame, and turn that to 0 and hit I. So that's going to grow out. And then for the overall growth of the plant, that's not going to be a shape key. We'll just press, we'll go back to the beginning. We'll press S for scale. We'll just scale it all the way down till it's like a tiny little sprout. And I can just hit I right here and set a keyframe for scale. And then we'll go to the end of this animation and scale it back up. That's good. I for scale. And then we can also set the shape key on our, whoops, sorry. We can also set the shape key on our curve. So here we have our initial curve, and we'll just set the value to I, and then we'll go to the end, and we'll turn it to 1. So it's just going to bend a little bit as it goes, and we'll set that to the shape key 2. And now you can see there's our flower. See, it opens up as it grows. So the only problem with this is it kind of grows and then it just starts again. So if we want to actually put this in a VR environment, maybe we want it to just grow and hang out there, at least for a while. So, there's a few ways to do that, to have the animation just go once. But right now, I'm just going to add a whole bunch of frames to this. I'll just add 2,000 frames to the end of this. So we get to watch our flower grow. And then there it is, grown. We can also have fun just kind of like scrubbing on it. And obviously when we export it, we won't see the curve anymore, but we can hide that and it'll still work just fine. You don't actually have to see the curve. So there we go. Beautiful flower. And it grows.